Well, it's 7:30, so I'll just say a few words. Oops, I think I'm muted. No, I'm not. Okay. Uh, Welcome, good morning, and thank you for joining us as we resume our special Mornings with Sacred Silence, which includes one of our wonderful teachers. This morning, the Reverend Susan Smith will include, along with our shared silence, probably 15 or 20 minutes of teaching. And I'll let her introduce her topic. Oh, we've got a few more people joining us, so let me get them all in here. This is great. Just a reminder that the Mornings with Sacred Silence are co-sponsored by the Arkansas House of Prayer and the Interfaith Center. And my name is Sister Deborah Trolette, and I currently serve as the Executive Director of the Arkansas House of Prayer. So again, we are delighted to resume our Mornings with Sacred Silence. They occur on the second Tuesday of the month. And just a reminder that we are recording this session so that anyone who's not able to join us has the benefit of the program through the Interfaith Center YouTube. So it'll be posted there. Because it's being recorded, just a reminder, if you're not comfortable during the meditation time or any time being seen on the video recording, you can simply turn your camera off. A reminder also that next week we continue with our practicing sacred silence. So on the first, third, and fourth Tuesdays of the month, we practice. So it's a shorter program, 30 minutes in length, with 20 of those minutes being dedicated to shared silence. We have a brief opening and then a brief closing when we do the 30-minute sessions. So again, we welcome you. And there is a chat function if something that Susan shares evokes a question that you'd like to ask. So I'll try to monitor that, and then we can get to that at a certain point in the program. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Susan. And again, thank you all for joining us. And Susan, thank you so much for being our teacher this morning.
I'm happy to be with everybody. And years ago, I studied with a Jungian analyst whose name is Marion Woodman, who's written a lot of books. And she taught a lot about masculine and feminine energy within a woman, within a man, within the culture. And this is kind of a short version of one of the main things that she taught, is that the feminine in us is related to us being receptive in our bodies, listening, in our feelings, in connection, in relationship, going with the flow. And the masculine in each of us has to do with how we think and our belief systems and the actions that we take and the structures that we bring. And so she used to say, in our society, the masculine energy within a woman or a man or in the culture, the masculine rapes the feminine every chance it gets. Now, I want to unpack that a little bit, which is not mainly what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about seeds in a minute, but I'm going to talk about this for a second. So what I think that has to do with sacred silence is, I think that the masculine part of each of us that has a list, projects, tasks, busyness, things that we think we need to do, violates the feminine side that wants the silence and wants the receptivity and wants the meditation. And so we need to be aware of that temptation within ourselves first, so that we can set a boundary on the drivenness of the masculine side. So we need both. We need our masculine side and we need our feminine side. One is not better than the other. And one is heavily undervalued in our culture, and that is the feminine, and especially silence. So I noticed that while I was standing by my sister, Sister Deborah, and we were practicing for the Love Thy Neighbor event. And so during the Love Thy Neighbor event, Sister Deborah introduced the House of Prayer and introduced silence and made some very wise links between silence and service and love of others. And then we were going to have only 2 minutes of silence. Okay, so this is an hour-long program, and we have 2 minutes of silence. So the masculine has already won, right? The masculine has gotten 58 minutes out of a 60-minute program. And somebody that out of very good intention said, well, Sister Deborah, during the silence, what would you think about the choir using that 2 minutes to move to the stage while people are having their silence? And Sister Deborah and I rose up like this. I mean, we like straightened our spines. And for a moment, I thought, my Lord in heaven, we only have 2 minutes of silence. And I heard Marion Woodman, this very famous Jungian, I heard her say, Susan, the masculine rapes the feminine every chance it gets. And I thought, I'm watching it right here. Somebody wants things to be so efficient that while Sister Deborah cast her magic spell of getting 300 or 400 people into quiet, somebody is going to allow our choir to walk and make noise and distract. So we weren't ugly, although I thought about being, but we weren't ugly, but we were guardians, and I could feel it in my body. I could feel my body and Sister Deborah's body. We rose up and we both said, we need the silence. So I'm bringing this up because I want you to be aware that when you help yourself have silence and you help other people have silence and you encourage it, it's very rebellious and very countercultural. So you are a rebel for spirit just by stealing the silence for yourself. You're going against the culture. And we need all of you to be rebels for silence. Okay, so that's not what I was going to talk about today, but it needed to be said. Do you want to say anything about that, Sister Deborah?
No, I think you said it very well. Thank you.
I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to have a gun and love thy neighbor to protect the silence. I'm going to have to show out here. Does anybody want to say anything about it before we shift kind of to our topic? So if you enjoy being rebellious, keep your quiet time. That'll show them. Okay, so today I wanted to talk about seeds. And if you were at the Love Thy Neighbor event, you heard me say some of this, but there was no time to develop it. So I'm going to develop it a little bit. One of the things that silence does is it provides us a chance for seeds that are in our spiritual path to be planted. Some of these are easy seeds. Some are suffering and very difficult seeds. And some are seeds that God is asking us to plant that we actually don't know anything about yet. So I'm going to talk about the gentle ones for a minute, then the hard ones, and then the mystery ones. And then we'll sit in silence and then we'll do Q&A. So Sister Deborah, it's been a while since I've done this. Did we do the Q&A after the silence, right? That's what I remember.
Yes.
That's our rhythm. Okay. So easy seeds. So there are seeds that are yours to plant. It might be community service. It might be loving a neighbor. It might be something for a family member. It might be how you treat somebody in the grocery. It could be anything. It could be a project that you're working on. So there's seeds that are yours to do, and they're not anybody else's to do, and they're not going to get done if you don't do them. And some of them are really easy to do. It's something you enjoy. It's natural. It's not stressful. And silence helps even the easy seeds that are yours to plant. having a little silence around that, it helps you fertilize your seed. It helps you give it time to take root. It helps you appreciate the bloom of that seed. So even if you're doing something that is easy and that comes to you naturally, having some silence just allows spirit to go into the process and give water and fertilizer and sunshine and blessing. So I'm going to give a little example about that. For reasons that are beyond my wisdom to understand, in this particular lifetime, God has gifted me with an extremely easy husband, a man that really loves me profoundly and has treated me so well. And when I was young, I was too stupid and too arrogant and too cocky to even have any understanding of what I had been given. Over the years, it gradually became clear to me that this was something really unusual and really beautiful. And I believe in other lifetimes, I may not have this the next time. This is not a permanent guarantee of anything, but it's an easy seed that I plant in my life. Not that there haven't been fights and misunderstandings and this and that. I'm not talking about that, but the basic flow of love. So in the silence, in the last couple of years, it is as if God wanted to say to me, I want you to get this at a deeper level. So one time I was going through a period of suffering and I was really complaining to God, like mightily. And I heard back, I've given you Rick and Marguerite. What more do you want? Marguerite was my best friend that passed away. And it was like God said to me, quit the mouthing. I have given you a gift. I've given you a present of two of my best people. No complaining about your suffering. That awareness came in silence. Another awareness about the marriage came in silence, where I heard, you have an arranged marriage, even though you're not a Hindu. And guess who arranged it for you? Spirit. It's like God is saying, in the silence, this seed that I have given you as a gift that has been planted and that is blooming, you're not fully appreciating it. So one more time, Susan, sit in the quiet so that I can show you what I have given to you. One more thing about that positive seed. I seem to be called to go back to Scotland periodically. And once in the silence, I heard, I actually incarnated on the planet in Scotland, but I came to the US to find Rick, my husband. That kind of stuff only comes for me in the silence. I do not get that while I'm brushing my teeth, walking my dog, cleaning up dog hair, or going to the grocery. That comes in silence. So the content of that seed about my marriage is not the point. The point is that we have all been given gifts, whether it's a friendship, IQ points, an artistic ability, whatever the blessing is, we've all been given seeds that are easy. And the silence allows us to plant and fertilize that seed more deeply and more beautifully and more wonderfully. So the next seed that silence helps. Everybody in this room has suffered because you just cannot live on the planet without it. And so I mentioned, and many of you already know this, that there are types of seeds that have a very scientific name that only sprout when they have been in a literal nasty fire. So the lodgepole pine is one example of this. The seed of the lodgepole pine is coated with a hard resin, and the resin cannot be melted off without a profound high heat from a forest fire. So after a forest fire has destroyed what we thought was beautiful, God sprouts a new seed. So we have things in our lives that get destroyed, and it's never happy. It is always painful. It is traumatic. It seems destructive. We cannot imagine why in the world would God be destroying this belief system, this habit, this person, this friendship, this way of running our lives. But if God decides that enough is enough with something we're doing that is not taking us or other people into a deeper spiritual path, and if we're not getting it the easy way, then the destructive side of God just comes and says, well, hell, baby, I'm going to burn the resin off that pattern. We're getting rid of that. It's always painful, but the silence helps. So I'm going to give you an example. There's a young man who's not in my family, but is close to me. He's in his mid-30s, and he has struggled and struggled and struggled and struggled to try to get on his feet. And I decided about 5 years ago that I was going to help him. And I have spent untold hours trying to help him get on his feet. And none of it worked. I think he felt the love from me, but in the areas where he needed to make progress, we were at zip. So I tried one last big adventure, blah, 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 to help him go overseas and do volunteer work. Anyway, it was a big mess. And finally, I met with a PhD psychologist who works with people that have this man's psychiatric diagnosis. And I realized that my kind interventions were absolutely not only not going to work, but they were standing in his way. And it became clear to me that I was going to have to play hardball with this dude. And so then I had to learn how to play hardball. And when I got him overseas to do volunteer work, and he acted out and showed out and did really stupid things and bad things, in my old paradigm, what I would have done is I would have found the money and helped him get home and try to patch him up and help him feel okay about his bad decisions and figure out whatever. But it became so clear to me that the resin had to be burned off the seed. So when he got himself stuck in a city in Europe where he knew nobody, and he wanted me to send him the money to get home, I really sat with it, and I researched the best 3 homeless shelters in the city he was in, and I sent him those homeless shelters and told him to get himself there. I also researched that he could get a job because he had an American passport in that city. He didn't need a visa and he could work. And I sent him $9 a day for food. And that is me playing hardball with this kid. That is a young man. That is me burning off the resin of an old pattern that was not working. Eventually, I had to get enough technical skills to block him from iPhone, text message, PayPal, this, that. I mean, I spent hours, and I told him that I would talk to him through a mediator. Long story. What is the point of all that? All of that was suffering for me and suffering for him. And it's only in the silence and only in prayer over and over and over did I realize that I had no choice. This had to be, no matter how painful it was for him or for me. And it's the silence and the prayer and the silence and the prayer and the silence and the prayer that gave me the strength to tolerate my pain about it and to get through it. So we have easy seeds that are ours, that God has given us to plant. It might be a type of work that's just easy for you. And the silence helps us there. We have really tough, painful assignments that help us grow. And without the silence in a spiritual community, it's going to be really hard to do those. And then the third thing is we have seeds that we don't know about yet. It might be a new spiritual teaching that God is going to bring to you, something just brand new that you cannot even imagine. It might be a level of joy and peace that you have never had in your whole life, that God has around the corner, that God is wanting to bring to you. It might be a new community service assignment. We just don't know. But we're alive, we're on the planet, we are here only by God's grace and for God's purposes. And the divine is absolutely not through with any of us till the very last breath, as is evidenced by beautiful Queen Elizabeth, who was active till the end, that there are hidden seeds around the corner. And some of those come out without the silence, and some of them really only come in the silence. So in the silence, when you go into the silence without an agenda, without asking God to solve a problem, and you just sit there, when the time is right, the new seed that is trying to come to you will come. So I'll give you an example of one of those. I have two examples. Let's see, which one am I going to give? Okay, I might squeeze both of them in. So one of them is in February in meditation. To my surprise, I heard you and Betty Everett, that's a buddy, are going back to Scotland. I wasn't thinking of going to Scotland. I've been several times, and I go to hang out with sacred stones that are there. And I heard, you're going back to Scotland, and I'm sending you back to Tobermory. That's a town on an island where there are a bunch of sacred stones that I'm really drawn to. The idea to go came in silence. The person to go with me came in silence. The town to go to came in silence. And the recognition that God has a reason for this. I mean, I'm not going over, this is not a vacation, although it will be a vacation, but this is not a recreational activity. I'm being sent there for some very specific consciousness shifting reason for God's purposes. Maybe by this time next year, I'll have something new to teach you that God knows needs to be taught, but I don't know it right now. That's a seed that did not come. I did not sit down with a tour book and think, I think I might go to Scotland. That's not what happened. It happened only in the silence. One more thing that's happened to me in the silence about brand new seeds in the last month. In the silence, I felt a wave of energy that was kind of silver and black. And the more I sat near that in the quiet, I had fewer thoughts, not my personality, not my life, not my home, not my family, not my structure. And the longer I sat near this visual field of silver and black, like a wave, the longer I sat near that in the silence, the more I existed, my soul existed without my thoughts and without my personality and without my house and without my current life. So that was a surprise. That was a little present that God had that only could come in the silence. Because if I'm not in the silence, I think I'm me. I'm Susan. I have on black glasses. I have this hair. I have this husband. I have this dog. I have this house. If I'm not at that level of silence, I think I'm who I am in this lifetime. And that is a ridiculous joke, because we are an eternal soul that existed before and will exist afterwards. And we've just plopped into this little drama of whoever we are right now. And I will promise you that the silence either has already taken you or will definitely take you into a place where you can feel your eternal soul that existed before and that will exist afterwards. So now I've talked plenty, and we don't want the masculine to win over the feminine. So it's time for quiet. So if you have a method of meditation that you already love, please use that for your silence. If you are looking for a different one, the two that I love to use some of the time is to silently hum a vowel letter and allow that silent humming of the vowel letter to gradually relax your brain so that there are not so many thoughts there. And if you get distracted, go back to the silent humming. A second technique that you all have heard me talk about is to gradually spiral the silence through your body. And if you get distracted, go back to the spiral. Now, you don't need either of these techniques if you have one that you already like. So we're going to take, let me see how long we're going to take together. We're going to take 20 minutes together in the silence. And may God bless you in the quiet. If everybody will mute yourselves, please, and enjoy the quiet. And if you want to turn your audio off, that's okay too. Audio and video too, if you want to. God bless you. Amen. Let us gradually return our attention to the room, to our gathered community of brothers and sisters, to the place in our heart that is seeking from the silence. So now we have 15 minutes for discussion, sharing, anything that you noticed in the quiet, or any challenges you're having in the quiet, or anything that you want to ask about my comments about seeds. So just gradually, when you're ready, if you have something to say, we would love to hear from you.
Susan, Susan,
Yes.
can you say more about the seed of suffering?
I wrote a couple of quotes down that I shared, one or two of them at Love Thy Neighbor, but I brought a couple of them that I did not share. So I'll say these things, and then we'll talk about it. So Sri Aurobindo, who is a really amazing teacher from India, who's now deceased and who started an ashram in Pondicherry and who's published a lot. He says, be grateful for all ordeals. They are the seeds for the shortest way to the divine. And then Aurobindo says, our own outward happenings have their seeds from within. And then his female colleague and partner, the mother, says, may suffering and bloodshed produce a swifter germination of the seeds of beauty, light, and love, which must blossom and come to the earth. So, I mean, it's something we've all experienced, that, when we go through suffering, we're either going to get devastated and plowed down to the ground by it, or we're going to grow spiritually through prayer and meditation and scripture and the 12 steps and Al-Anon and spiritual community and forging a deeper friendship with a spiritual friend that helps us get through it. So suffering is, Richard Rohr says that the two fastest ways to grow spiritually are great love and great suffering. So, when we're suffering, our hearts are broken, or we're scared, or we don't know what to do. Is there anything that I'm supposed to do about this? Or how do I help carry this burden? Is there a task I'm supposed to do? And oftentimes where we want to help and we're confused, we don't know what to do, the silence helps with trying to figure out if there's anything we can do. The silence helps that. And a lot of times in suffering, as we know, because everybody on this call has been through it, a lot of times in the suffering, our understanding of who we are and what our families are supposed to be like, and what our work friends are supposed to be like, our programs for happiness just get destroyed right in front of our eyes and suffering because something is not going how we thought it was going to go. So, Dana, do you have any other thoughts about that?
No, you gave the example of the boy, but you know, the reality of it is you were really talking about yourself, your situation, the suffering of understanding about that you could not fix him, you had to let him go. And that was interesting to me. That's a hard lesson to learn.
And in fact, my ways of trying to help him were a false thing that kept him coming to me instead of going out in the world and learning from working and having a boss and having colleagues. And, you know, I was not intending to be in the way, but it became clear that both of his parents and I were all in the way.
Got it. Interesting.
Other thoughts or comments or wonderings?
I put it in the chat because I couldn't get it to unmute. It did now. But those same thoughts just overwhelmed me when you were speaking them. Because my own life story is a story of that very thing, and of me being for 45 years in a situation with, may I say, the same kind of wonderful man that God put together, me and him together, and that I lost him tragically and suddenly and out of nowhere, and my entire life was snatched away as I knew it or thought it would always be. And so I've spent the past almost 10 years absolutely learning who am I? Why am I, what am I supposed to do now? And this path that you speak of and that you've obviously been on for a long time is the pathway that's drawing me so deeply. And when you talk about, what did you say? I forget the term you used, the drama of who we are right now. That it's overwhelming to me, and I'm just hungry to go down that path farther and farther and farther. So thank you.
I'm so excited that we get to be with you while you are in this section of that journey.
Mhm.
I had a dream one time where somebody told me that God writes a number on the bottom of the sole of your feet, and it's invisible. And that number prescribes the exact moment that you're supposed to die.
Wow.
And that it's all preordained for a very, very specific reason. And that until your number is up, you are supposed to be here, Christine.
Oh, I know that now. I mean, I do.
And now what you say is, okay, my number is not up. The number that is on the bottom of my soul, my number is not up. And so then you just keep saying back to God, okay, I belong to you. You have me here. And you just keep asking, show me.
Yes.
And silence.
I got that. And
silence
yeah,
really helps.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where I was brought to that and brought to the Arkansas House of Prayer and a few other things about 6 or 7 years ago. And that has been because I'd already made that decision that you're speaking of, that I am here and I have two choices with what I do with it. So that's where I've gotten to. And
I'm so
glad. I'm thankful, so very thankful that I have found people like you and Sister Deborah and Sister Stephanie and Reverend Stephanie and other people like you. And thank you for doing this sort of thing.
Well, we do it because we all need it equally.
Yeah.
Good. I'm so glad you're here. And I'm glad you found the house of prayer and silence. So how about other folks?
Just one thought came to me, and it's one that I've kind of tucked in my heart for years and years and years, but it's about suffering. And Viktor Frankl wrote it. But I think for whatever reason, sometimes we maybe minimize or dismiss our own suffering because we compare it to someone else's suffering. We say, oh my gosh, somebody else, what's this in me? Because look what someone else has gone through. And he simply compared suffering to a vapor within that just fills our whole self, our whole person. So just forget the comparison. Just forget the comparison. Just honor it, as don't minimize what it is in your own life by comparing it to someone else's.
Okay. All right. Catherine, are you trying to unmute Catherine? Okay. So please help Catherine unmute.
It's Susan. It says the host is not allowing us to unmute ourselves.
Okay, that's gotten changed. We're all learning. This is an adventure in Zooming. So
Yeah, okay.
there's a question in the chat that I'm going to respond to. Do you want to say something else, Catherine?
Oh, I wanted to say thank you, and I wanted to comment on the profoundness of the silence that continues to be within our group. And I appreciate your comments very much. That's really what I was thinking about, was the silence. So I thought I better say something.
It's really a lovely thing to be able to stay, and when anybody wants to talk, they can, and if not, we seem very happy being quiet together, which is just, it's very countercultural. I mean, you're not going to leave your day and find that later in the day.
So we can cherish it now.
Mhm. Yeah. So somebody has put in the chat, would I say a little bit more about my experiences in Scotland and what they mean? So we have just a minute. I'll just say a little bit, and I'm happy to talk about it another time. There are sacred stones, as you all already know, all over the UK. And I keep being sent back to particular stones in Scotland. And I think the stones, you know how a quartz in the computer is like stores memory? I think that there is stuff in these stones that stores like a library from God. And when you stand near certain ones, you're given information and stuff is downloaded into you that God wants downloaded. So it's a spiritual educational experience to go and stand near those stones. And we'll talk about it again sometime. I'd love to talk about it again. We're at the end of our time, and I want to honor that. So I'm going to close us with a prayer. And remember, we're going to have 3 quiet times a month and 1 teaching time a month. And stay tuned for lots of wonderful programming from the House of Prayer and from the Interfaith Center, and a beautiful newsletter that is going to come out that is very relevant to what we've talked about today. The topic of the next newsletter is, okay, so you've heard something in silence. How do you know whether it's God or your own ego? So that's going to be really helpful. So I'll close this with a prayer. Eternal Father, Divine Mother, beloved friend, Holy One, may our meditations in these days to come, may those meditations be deep and filled with your Spirit, and may our daily lives reflect our quiet time with you. Amen. Thank you for being here. We look forward to being with you again. And thanks for Sister Deborah, who's very spunky to be learning Zoom technology, and for Chucky Bradbury, who's our board president, who keeps us all flowing along, and for Catherine, who's our program director. So blessings and thank you to everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. A blessing to be with you. Thank you so much.